Hi, Christine. Thank you so much for being here today. I really wanted to start with, I guess, your personal journey with grief and how you came to doing this work. So, how did it first begin, your grief journey, and what inspired you to support others through grief?
Oh my gosh. I mean, to answer that question, how did my or when did my grief journey begin? I mean, honestly, it began when I was a teenager. I mean, you think of a teenager that isn't grieving for something because there are so
Mm,
many varieties and levels to grief. We tend to really focus on grief that we experience when we lose somebody to death, but there are so many
mm,
other things that cause us to grieve. And so for that, when I was a teenager, but really it hit me pretty heavy actually during COVID. That's when I really started to feel that I was grieving my own existence. I felt so lonely,
mm,
and I didn't think, actually, it wasn't even, I don't think, it's when I would try to reach out and share my loneliness with others, they would say, well, everybody's feeling the same thing, right?
mm,
We're all in the same boat. Therefore, your feelings are not unique. And I'm just going to stop you there. Right. And so it was really isolating for me. And that's when a huge part of my life started to change. But really, grief became on the forefront for me. So last year, I started a live show with Connection on LinkedIn. And I was talking about being a life coach and going through the whole transformation process. And she was talking about work culture and et cetera, et cetera. And we had our first show in 2024. And the purpose of the show was to pick 3 words that described our 2023. And we both chose grief as one of our words, which was so
oh,
fascinating to me because it made me realize, hang on a second, we're not looking at grief enough. We're not looking at the multifaceted layers, feelings, emotions, and how it's
mm,
never the same grief. And then in February, I learned about a childhood friend. We grew up together. We went to elementary school together. We went to junior high, high school. I learned that he died by suicide in 2018. So 5.5 years later, I'm learning of this, which means so many other people didn't know. And so he wasn't being honored. And I was so devastated about that to know that I was learning of this 5.5 years later. And then I was devastated because that meant he didn't go through COVID with us. It's like it was almost as if it was a whole other lifetime that I spent my life with him. And then now, and it was just the most bizarre thing. And I noticed what a really hard time I had coping with it and how really insensitive other people were to my grief. And
mm,
it was really, really bothersome to me. And I just realized that not only are we experiencing grief every day in our lives, maybe we're grieving for ourselves, for who we haven't yet become, maybe we're grieving for a family member that we're not talking with anymore, right? Or, we're grieving a job loss. I mean, there are so many things. But then when I mixed in a friend dying, I just almost felt like I didn't know which way to grab. I didn't know how to come out of it. But I just realized then that there was a huge lesson in this for me. And I needed to pay very, very strict attention to it because there was something important that was going to come out of it. And it has. We haven't even got into the thick of it yet, but it certainly has.
mm.
So grief now really is an everyday conversation for me.
Was that what inspired you to start working with others around grief?
I will tell you, it was the sudden death of my dog, Maya Ray. She's Sheltie. She suddenly, unexpectedly, and traumatically passed away on May 28th in my arms, which I had no clue she was about to take her last breath. And it was unbelievably devastating to me. I've experienced the loss of many people in my life, grandparents. I had an aunt who died of breast cancer. So, we knew she was sick. You go through all those other
Mm,
phases of grief before the grief even hits. I've had multiple friends die by suicides. I have felt loss before. One of my best friends died complications of diabetes. So it wasn't a new experience for me, but nothing hit me like my dog's death. Nothing bulldozed me like my dog's death. And in going through this journey, so this was May 28th, February, I learned about my childhood friend. I was already fresh, still in thought of what is this about grief that I'm learning? What is it that I'm supposed to do with this? And when Maya died, it just took me a few weeks to realize that this was something I didn't just need to have slight conversations with. I needed to make this part of my practice. I needed to recognize grief in our everyday lives and that how some of us never really even grieve properly. And so then
Mm.
we're holding on to that. And then that can develop into regret and just really tough feelings that keep us from living our lives the way that we really want to. And so I decided to alter my practice just a little bit to hone in on comforting anybody in grief and helping them to overcome as healthily as they can.
And yes, you did mention your beloved dog, Maya Ray. Would you like to share a little bit about Maya Ray?
Right. And I love talking about her. So thank you. I think so many people are afraid to ask, right?
Mm.
Maya Ray was the most unique and special being I've ever had in my life. She came to us with troubles. We brought her home as a puppy and she left with troubles, right? I mean, this dog demanded every bit of your attention. I mean, we were forced to change our lives, Gabby, but we didn't mind because we loved her so much and we honestly didn't even realize how much we changed our lives for her. Like that's how easily it came by us because when you love like that, right? You don't even think of it as changing.
Mm.
It's just we're molding together. And we did that with Maya. Maya essentially had health troubles all of her life. She had high GI distress. It took me almost 2 years to find the right diet for her that wouldn't make her sick. And because it was just a thing, it was always a thing. And then she had separation anxiety. She hated leaving the house. She got car sick. I mean, this poor doggy who actually honestly she was the cutest dog you'll ever see. But if you have a dog, I'm sure your dog is the cutest dog you'll ever see too. But we joke all the time saying, why did we not maximize on dog modeling for her and get some money? I mean, she just was something else. She was really special. But, because she was so needy, she required so much attention. I mean, it was constant. Every single minute of every day, I was thinking, where's Maya? Is she okay? Is she having one of her stomach flare ups? And
Mm.
so we didn't know she was suffering from congestive heart failure towards the end. We didn't know she actually was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. So she was on medicine. So we're already used to her being a little bit more quiet than usual. I even brought her to the vet 6 weeks before. And they're like, nope, she's on the right dosage of medicine. Everything is fine. And then
Mm.
one morning she woke us up coughing. We're like, what is going on? And she was struggling to breathe. And so I'm just thinking, well, maybe she got a cough and maybe she has pneumonia. I'm not thinking anything other than that. So I take her to the vet and I notice on the way to the vet that her tongue was blue. So this is my first experience with any kind of symptoms like this. And
Mm.
I'm thinking, oh, crap, like this is really not good, but still not registering she might be in congestive heart failure. Get her to the vet. They're able to calm her down essentially because they sedate her. And in my mind, I'm thinking they've relaxed her. Kind of like if you take a Valium on a really low dose, that you're just like, okay, I'm cool. No, she was fully sedated as if she was going in for surgery. And they said, well, she's going to need overnight care. And we don't have that here. You need to bring her to an ER vet. So, we have it all set up to take her to the vet. And I'm thinking she's going to walk out. I'm just going to grab her by the leash and we're going to get in the car and, they're holding her in her arms and she is just wrecked out. And I'm like, oh my God. So luckily I had a friend that was going to drive so that I could be in the back seat with Maya. And the vet tech put Maya in my arms. And, I'm trying to hold her the right way because I knew she was having trouble breathing. And I'm just kind of shocked that she's as sedated as she is. I'm just like, what is going on? And we haven't even, the car isn't even in reverse. And Maya gurgles and takes her last breath. And
Mm.
I was absolutely stunned. I was completely stunned. And I just couldn't believe it. I was absolutely heart-wrenching, heartbroken. And if it weren't for all the things that Maya troubled us with, right? What we did out of love for all those years, I don't know if it would have hurt as bad. When somebody requires that much attention, but it was just really, really hard. And she taught us so many things that I didn't fully grasp until I was grieving her, until I was weeks into the grieving process. But animals are so incredibly special. They love us, which we all know, right? They love us unconditionally. And we love them unconditionally. I mean, we almost don't have a choice because they're just sitting there, wagging their tail, just pet me, play with me, and they're so wonderful. And they teach us, whether we want to learn or not, how to love unconditionally. They teach us how to just be honest and just be quiet when we need to, right? And so I was blown away with how much I learned from this animal, this fur baby, sweet, beautiful love, Maya Ray. And thank you for offering that moment to share about her. I appreciate it.
No, thanks for sharing that as well. I know it's not easy, especially it hasn't been that long since the loss. And I was actually wondering, were there any particular things that you found challenging with this loss? Because sometimes I think people that lose pets, people don't really take it that seriously, or they don't really see the grief as heavy, or as they don't validate that grief in the same way that they would if you had lost a person. Did you find the process afterwards challenging in its own way?
I did a little bit. I did. And especially because this was my so not only was it my first experience losing one of my own animals. I mean, when I was a child, we had dogs, but I was too young really to process what it meant. So not only was it my first animal, but it was the most devastating loss I've ever experienced, right? So I'm just kind of beside myself with it. And I remember had been a few days, and I posted on Facebook to alert, the people that didn't know, that weren't involved in our direct little circle. And I remember somebody wrote, "I'm sorry to hear, but at least you gave her a great life." And
Mm,
I thought, you know what? That wasn't the only time I saw that either. I mean, I saw
mm,
that a lot of other places and comments, and I thought, you know what? I know I gave her a great life, right? I mean, that's like telling a spouse who just lost their partner, well, you were
mm,
a good spouse. You're fine. It was like,
mm,
no, that doesn't do anything for me. Of course I gave her a great life, right?
mm,
And it just again solidified why it was so important to talk about and to share the raw truth of what really happens with grief, and that it's different for everybody. I mean, all these other deaths that I've experienced and any death that anybody else experiences, no two will feel the same. They will all
mm,
feel differently, and you will grieve differently. Maybe some of them you might be able to process a little faster, right? I mean, we always love, right? That love never goes away, which is why grieving is so hard. But what I found difficult was that, you know, a week, right? Afterwards, nothing. And that's when I really felt isolated. And I would just get texts from people say, "Hey, how's your day?" And I'm thinking, my day freaking sucks. It's awful. Like I'm at my computer trying to work and all I'm
mm,
doing is crying. And it what it does to the sufferer is it keeps us from wanting to share. It keeps us from wanting to share with people who aren't supporting us, because then we feel like we have to back up, right? We have to defend why we have our feelings. And
mm,
nobody ever needs to defend their grief. I don't care if it's been 5 minutes or it's been 5 years. Nope. Your feelings are your feelings. And so it was really difficult. And I had to get through that period of isolation and realizing that we just have grown up in a society that aren't taught to sit with people when they're sad. We're taught to
mm,
cheer them up. We're taught to say, "Hey, the sun's going to come out tomorrow," right? I mean, all these positive platitudes. But it just empowered me in Maya's name to really start making that change, right? Even if it was just in my mind, to say, this is for Maya. Like this call I'm about to have, this post I'm about to put up, this video I'm about to shoot. This is for Maya, and this is for all the people who are suffering alone.
Hmm. And how did you navigate that? That isolation. Did you have were your immediate family there for you, or yeah, how did you deal with that?
That's such a great question. And I can't wait to get to like the official answer of it. But yes, there were, and it goes on for like 2 weeks, right? There's a lot of support. And then afterwards it's, oh, you're still upset. And again, we, these people, these family members, these people that love me, they have good intentions. They care. We just don't have the right tools, right? They just don't have the right tools to say, how are you today? Yesterday might have been good, right? But how are you today? And so I was really struggling. It was about 5.5 weeks into my grieving, and I felt pretty isolated. And a friend who I had just met, she had lost her partner 3 months prior to complications from cancer. And she sent me a meditation that is specifically grief for people and pets. And so she sent it to me. And I was just feeling so confused. I'm thinking, are people not reaching out? Because, like, have I isolated too much? Is it my fault? Right? Like,
Mm.
have I done this to myself? Have I created this situation in my life? And then that night, so I was very upset. And that night I listened to this meditation, which is on my website, by the way. I had to share it because it's so important. And the meditation goes through feeling the loss, recognizing the loss, but then focusing on what your loved one who has passed taught you. And because you're in silence, right? It's just you, it's quiet. You have a moment to really think about what your loved one taught you, besides what you already know,
Mm.
besides what you've written in all the cards that you've given over the years or whatever it might be. And I'm getting goosebumps, Gaby, because I realized Maya took no prisoners in her life, right? We changed our lives for her. She demanded what she needed. I mean, that was it. If we didn't give her what she needed,
Mm.
she literally got depressed. And then, of course, we go scoop her up, right? So, I mean, she lived her life exactly as she felt she needed to do it. And that's what I learned from Maya, that it's,
Mm.
don't question, right? I don't need to question. If people aren't showing up for me the way that I need them to, either I need to reach out or I just need to find other people that can support me during this time, right? And it taught me so incredibly much. I listened to it a few times actually, but the first time was the most impactful and helped me realize also that she wasn't coming back, because I think that at least for me was a really big barrier in the progression, just the process of my grief, is I just wanted her back. I didn't want her gone. And by holding on to that, I couldn't relieve myself of anything. I just was stuck in a really rough point of misery. But after that meditation, I was like, she's gone. She's gone. I mean,
Mm.
it didn't cure my sadness, right? It doesn't do that, but it was so comforting. And so that was really helpful for me in navigating through one of the most difficult parts.
Mm. And I feel like, yeah, I've gone through that process as well of, over time, it's sort of each day, each occasion that comes around and you realize, oh, and they're not here still, like, and it kind
Yeah.
of takes time for it to sink in.
Yes.
Yeah. And did you end up finding other people? How did that sort of unfold for you?
I started writing a lot more.
Okay.
I started pouring my feelings. I wrote an article about Maya, which I know I shared with you, which was so incredibly therapeutic. And in that, the folks that were reading it, they resonated with the pain, right? And so their comments were extremely comforting and validating. And sometimes that's what we need. Sometimes
Mm.
that's all we need, is to be validated, which is, I see your suffering. I don't even have to understand, but I see your suffering and I'm here for you. That's what we need when we're grieving. And so luckily my spouse, we've been very, very tight through this whole thing, which is a huge source of strength and support, and
Mm.
probably would have been much more difficult if we were not in sync with that. And my mom has been very supportive. She'll text me. So my nickname is Teen. She'll text me or she'll call me to, oh, gosh, how are you doing? I'm so worried about you. I worry about you. She's an Italian woman, so she worries all the time. But it's elevated now. But she's been very sweet, and I think just a lot of people just don't understand the depths, right? Until you get to that point.
Mm.
As I mentioned, this was the most heartbroken I've ever been, the most absolutely devastated. So before then, I understood to a certain point grief, but I didn't understand this level. And it's been very educating for me, and very important in the work that I do, in the way that I want to show up and support other people.
Mm. And what would you say or share with people who've experienced a pet loss, of someone a pet that they really love and feel like maybe they're struggling with the isolation or that, their grief is not being acknowledged?
You know, Pets in particular, I think a lot of people don't understand. And so the most important thing is to find the number of people, whether it's two or it's five, whatever number is comfortable for each individual, to grab onto those people and say, I just need you to support me through this. I don't know how long it's going to take me. I might be a mess for a year. I might be a mess for 2 months. Can I depend on you? And you know what the truth is though, Gabby, I say this now, 3 months into it, but I was in a grief haze for 8 weeks. I was in what I call unconscious negligence, right? Where we're driving down the road and we run through a stop sign. And we had no idea there was a stop sign there. You go to the grocery
Mm.
store to pick up 3 things and you go in and you can't remember at all what you're there for. I mean, our brains are not connected to our hearts when we're grieving that deeply. And so honoring your pain, whether it's a pet or a human, any animal, right? Love is love, period. And to honor your pain and do for your pain what you need. Don't allow anybody to make you feel like you have to explain why you're in pain. And don't feel like you have to make other people comfortable with your pain, which I think we do, right? We do that. We immediately apologize when we start to cry, which it just breaks my heart to think about. It's like we're in our rawest moment right now and we're regretful. We're sorry. And and I know I've done that before too, but honoring our feelings and letting it be. It's like you know more than anybody on this earth, because there's only one you, right? There's only one me. Only I know how much I love Maya. And only I can truly fully honor that as I need to. And so listening to ourselves as best as we can, and then having a few people that can honor our pain and our struggle as we go through this journey is so important.
Mhm. And you mentioned a little bit about how you're honoring Maya Ray, but yeah, how has she kind of changed and impacted your practice and your life since
Oh
her
my
passing?
gosh. Yeah, so much. Like I mentioned about the meditation, how much she taught me
Mm.
to stick to my guns for what feels right for me, right? Just, I'm 53 years old, and it took me until my late 40s to realize I had my own voice. And so it's even more powerful for Maya to be represented in what I do as a coach and just how I support other people. But I've chosen to write more, because
Mm.
my rawest of feelings, our rawest of feelings will come out when we're struggling. And to write them down, even if it's just for ourselves, it's a journal, or if we like to write in publications, or, whatever channel that might be. I found so much comfort from the support that I got, that I thought, you know what? I'm going to write. If I reach one person, great, right? If I reach that one person 2 years down the line because they didn't see the article until then, great. I mean, that's me honoring Maya Ray, doing in life what she did and just living it to its fullest. Oh my goodness. I wish you could have met her, Gabby. I know we live on opposite ends of this earth, but she was just one of those dogs, you know. She would
Mm.
just, oh hey, hey Gabby, oh okay, cool. Let's play some ball. All right, cool. And then she'd be your best friend until you left, and then she'd be depressed when you left. So, you know, a dog like that, you know, we have to keep their memory alive and keep, you know, saying their name.
Mm.
And who knows, something at some point might have her name on it with my business, or, you know, some kind of movement or project, or who knows. She deserves
Mm.
it.
She does have a great name, Myra.
She does. Thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah. And I do love dogs because I actually look after other people's dogs pretty often.
Oh,
So
that's so wonderful.
I don't have my own pets, but I look after other people's pets. So animals have a soft spot in my heart. Um,
Yes. I
yeah.
love that you do that. I love that you do that, because you know what, by you doing that, you are creating such great comfort to the animal, they're humans, right? That know
Mm,
that their dogs, their animals are in trusting hands. And I can't tell you how much that means for when we travel. And,
mm.
you know, to know that that is there, that love and care means so much. So what you're doing is amazing.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's therapy, free therapy for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the animals are so caring and so loving, as you mentioned. Actually,
Yeah.
yeah. So I wanted to ask you, like, what does a, I guess, coaching session with you look like? You know, if people were curious, how would you describe it? The
Well,
experience.
let's see.
Mhm.
So I'm a life purpose and transformation coach. I'm also a support coach, support and comfort coach, which is interesting that I wasn't focusing as much on that before I lost my array, until again, I realized how grief is speaking to me, and that how it's speaking to everybody else, but yet they don't feel like they have an outlet for it. And so I offer packages for purpose and transformation coaching, and I also offer support, short-term support for somebody that is grieving a loss that has happened right now. But I always wrap in the level of support that needs to come with letting go of something. And you know, I wish I didn't say letting go, because when we lose a loved one, we just let go of the fact that they're not here with us anymore, but we never let go of them. And so I think really what I meant is letting go of all these feelings that we haven't been able to resolve, so that we can find purpose in what it is that we learned from them, that maybe we didn't realize what we learned from them, and to carry that through a transformation. Because I don't think there is any way that we can go through a loss without experiencing some sort of transformation. But that's the key, right, Gabby? It's either we recognize that we're going through something, you know, pretty major,
Mm,
because sometimes we don't recognize that and then we ignore the lessons. And then that's where
mm,
that regret comes in, right? That's where 5 years down the line, it's like, why do I keep feeling this way? Why can I not, you know, get rid of this baggage? So those sessions are really about finding what it is within us that holds us back, whether it comes from grief loss or, you know, grief experience, and pulling out the positives as much as possible to learn and transform into a really amazing purpose in life.
mm. And yeah, if someone is stuck in their grief and or in emotions related to a loss, what's maybe just one tiny thing that they could take away that they could do at this moment, you know, to help themselves or to sort of shift something slightly?
Well, aside from that meditation, which really is just so incredibly helpful, and you don't even have to be a practicing meditation type of person, you know, to do that. But you know, what's really weird is I just actually did this practice the other day. And what I did is I kept thinking to myself, what is it that I want my Ray to know? Right. So, what is it that the griever wants the one who has passed to know? Write it down. I don't care if it takes an hour or a week, however long, until you feel like you've got it all written down. You've written down all of those feelings. When you feel settled with it, read them, but read them back to yourself, because it's the ones that are living. It's, you know, me that needed to receive that message. Maya is gone. When we are left as the survivor of this loss, we can't communicate with them anymore. And so we have to find a way to forgive these feelings that we feel like we can't communicate to our loved ones anymore. And so
Mm.
freeing our hearts from what we feel like we can never communicate again, when ideally we need to communicate it to ourselves.
I actually use that as a writing prompt as well in my sessions. Yeah, writing a letter to them directly, I think, is really powerful because when you after they die, you kind of you do want to talk to them, or you do want to sort of say so much, but you just don't, because you don't know how, or you just think, oh well, I can't talk to them anymore because they're not here. But yeah, I do think you can still sort of communicate in your own way. You might not hear back, but
Right.
you can still tell them what's going on, or still
Yes.
communicate what's happening in your life.
So I want to share this, and you may already know it because you've been, coaching about grief, and with this podcast and talking so much about it. You've talked to so many wonderful, amazing people. But I just heard this the other day. There's been research going on for years that our brain and our cells don't die just because our heart stops beating, that we still
Mm.
have brain activity, and that it could go on for hours after we take our last breath. And
Mm.
I'm getting goosebumps again, because when I heard this, I thought, Maya heard me then. She heard me. Like, my biggest fear is that I told you how afraid she was of everything. We get to the vet, they scoop her up and take her back. And the next time I saw her was seconds, and she died in my arms. And I've been
Mm.
so heavy in thought and fear and just heartbreak, thinking that she thinks I dropped her off and said, that's it.
Mm.
Because she knew she
Mm.
was dying. She had to have known she was dying. And if she smelled me and then took her last breath, and then after she died and I spent all that time with her, talking to her, telling her, I'm right here, I've been here, all these things, it gave me hope. It
Mm.
gave me hope. And I don't even want to know if the study's only been done on humans and not animals, because I'm holding
Mm.
on to the hope, because, we have to do what we need to do, right? And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thought. And so for anybody that has sat with a loved one that has died and talked to them afterwards,
Mm.
the likelihood of them hearing it, getting it, they got it. How beautiful is that?
That's amazing. I didn't know that actually, so
Yeah.
that's something new.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I can even
Um,
send you the link. Because I wanted to double check, I thought, I mean, even just the belief of it made me feel better, but I thought, well, let me just check here. And it's true. It's true.
mm.
So yeah, yep, the goosebumps just continue. It's just such a great comfort to many of us that have been in that position.
Mm. And Christine, how can, if people are interested in your work and working with you, how can people find you?
Thank you for asking. And I always welcome a conversation with everybody, because I think everybody tells a really great story. We've all had a tough life. But my website is definitely the best way. You can access everything from there. And my website is my full name, ChristinePasso.com.
Thank you. I really love this conversation. And is there anything that we didn't speak about that you would like to add, or that you'd like to share?
You know what? I would, because I've talked this whole time about Maya. And of course, we've talked
Mm.
about grief, but I didn't once mention our surviving dog, Zoe. So
Mm.
Zoe is 3 years older than Maya, and Zoe has grieved a lot, like way
Mm.
more than I even expected. And it just really speaks to how impactful Maya's existence was in this house, right?
Mm.
And going through this journey with Zoe, and finding out ways to support our animals as they grieve has been a really wonderful experience. And to watch her go through this, and for me to have to step up in a different way when I am struggling, right? But to be there for her has been, again, a beautiful experience, and I think a bonding experience for us. But, everybody's affected when there is any kind of loss like that. And those who we think aren't going to be, we should always have an open heart to. And so that's, I want to honor my beautiful dog, Zoe. And if you go to my website, it's most of the pictures. I've got Zoe there and Maya. So you'll get to, through pictures, meet them.
Yeah, I actually, sorry, I didn't really realize that Zoe was there throughout that time as well with Maya Ray, because I think that pets do definitely feel that loss.
Oh,
Mm,
100%. I mean, it was really astounding to see, and
mm,
how long she's still grieving. She is, I mean, so are we, but to really
mm,
recognize, to really see it obviously in Zoe has been heartwarming and also just, devastating.
And what have you noticed, I guess, with Zoe in terms of after Maya?
So Maya died. It was a few days later, and we had to brush Zoe, but she hates it. So Shelties are long-haired dogs. They're like, as if people refer to them as miniature collies, but they're not miniature collies. They're Shelties. And normally Zoe hates it. She's, walking all around. All she did was stand there and stare at me, and I thought, oh my goodness. And Zoe and Maya had different beds. And Zoe never ever got in Maya's bed. And it was 4 days after Maya died. Zoe looked at me. She crawled in Maya's bed, laid down, and just stared at me. And she's done that 3 or 4 times.
Mm,
That's very recognizable. As she was very fatigued, very lethargic, and losing weight, which I've been monitoring. I even brought her into the vet. I had a whole blood panel taken on her. But that's, she's grieving in her way, and she's getting more treats than normal and losing weight. But
oh,
maybe her
mm,
body's doing something different, right? I mean,
mm.
everything's different. So she gets a lot of hugs and kisses and walks, and luckily I'm home with her all day, so I feel so grateful.
Mm. Yeah, and that's a gift as well to be able to be there with her and to it's like a mutual, mutual support buddies in your
Yes,
grief.
absolutely. Yeah, well,
Mm.
we would cry together, we just sit there together or sleep in together because we're like, we're not getting out of bed right now.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, and thank you for this conversation, Christine. Yeah, I think, pet loss. I'm starting to hear a little bit about it, but I think it's still not every in the everyday kind of conversations around grief. And a lot of people do just think, oh well, you can just get another dog, and so it's not really recognized as in the same way that losing a person is. So
Yeah. I mean, if you really think about it, just to have these last few notes that we don't realize, animals, they depend on us for everything, right? We train them to go potty outside, which means we have to let them outside. They depend on us to give them the food that we have in the containers and have it put away, right? Like we have to do all that. If they're scared, they come to us. Humans grow up. Human children, you can give a human child at I don't know what age, they can have their own little refrigerator, maybe, and some cereal, and they can get themselves breakfast in the morning, right? Like you can set those
mm,
things up. Animals don't do that. They are 100% relying on you for their life every day. And then they depend on you at the end too, right? They
mm,
depend on you to look out for their best interest. And I think there's so much in that creates that bond within a human and an animal that is irreplaceable. There's nothing that can be compared to it.
yeah, I think that there's such an intimacy with in terms of the relationship we have with pets and animals, because as you said, like, and they're always around, and they're always
Yeah.
excited to see you. And they're just, their presence is so felt. They're in your home, and yeah, they're just, they're always looking out for you, or you're looking out for them. So it's such a close bond. And for some people, their pet is their best friend, or their comfort and their support, and maybe they don't have other people that they can rely on in the same way.
It's true. I mean, I heard a statistic that 30% of people in the workplace go home to an alone space, that there's nobody there. But if they have an animal, and they have an animal, that's 30% of the world. That's a lot of people. And I
Mm.
will tell you, Zoe is the best stylist I've ever had. She gives great advice. Anybody that wants, 1-800 Zoe.
Does she let you know if she doesn't, if she likes something or
So, why she's always the best stylist? Because she thinks everything looks great. And I know it doesn't, but I'll go, okay, so you say so.
Oh, that's cute. Oh, thanks. Thanks for this, Christine. And for the laughs.
Good. We need to laugh, right? We need to laugh. There's a
Yeah.
time to grieve, there's a time to laugh, and there's time to grieve again. There's a time to laugh.
Yeah. And sometimes, people might be crying and laughing at the same time. So
Yes, yes,
sometimes
yes.
we do both.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.